Hi there, welcome to the Accent Edit YouTube channel. My name is Lena and I am a certified speech language pathologist and an accent coach, helping you to speak English with clarity and confidence. Today's video is all about the first most common mistakes non-native English speakers make when speaking English. Essentially, is the R sound. The R sound is very tricky in American English because of the way it can be pronounced. And there's actually 21 different ways of doing so. So it gets tricky if you're not used to pronouncing it the correct way in American English. If you're used to pronouncing the trilled R, such as r, in your native language. I speak Polish, or my first language is Polish. So this is the way I grew up pronouncing the R. So it was a little bit tricky for me to learn it the American way, but I did it, and I know you can do it as well. So before we dive into the video, please make sure you subscribe to the channel so you get notifications whenever another incredible video comes out, and that way you are all up to date. If you like the video, please give us a like, leave a comment, and let us know how we're doing. Okay, let's dive in. So mistake number one, which is one of the most common pronunciation mistakes I hear that non-native speakers make, is the R sound, which is not pronounced correctly. So the reason why that happens is because there are about 21 different types of R in American English, and that is not common in other languages. Some languages are, have one type of R or a few types of R, like the trilled R, like the R sound, and you don't hear that in English. So speakers who do not speak English natively, they will bring those rules of their R into the R in American English, and that's when it's mispronounced, right? And another thing to take notice here is for you, for somebody who is learning or was learning British English or Australian English, the accent is very different. And in American English, the R is always pronounced, whereas in British or Australian, it is only followed by the vowel sound. So this is something to keep in mind because not everybody knows that American English, the R, we always say it out loud. Okay. So I wanted to teach you how to make the American R. I'm not going to just come here and tell you what the mistake is. I wanted to give you actual tools and an explanation of how to make it. So let's dive right in. So generally, the sound is made by bringing the tongue up and to the back of the mouth, while the bulk of the tongue rests on the roof of the mouth between the hard palate and the soft palate, and the tip of the tongue hovers just below the hard palate. So to make it a little bit easier to understand, when you take your tongue behind your teeth, if you touch up there right behind the teeth, you'll feel little bumps. That's your hard palate, right? And when you keep going back with your tongue, you'll feel that it is the soft palate because the surface becomes smooth and it's softer, right? So when you are making the R sound, your tongue goes up and back, right? And the tongue tip rests on the roof of the mouth between the hard and the soft palate, right? So it's kind of like when the hard palate ends, the bumps end, and they become to get soft. So that's where the tip of the tongue rests. It's like curled up, kind of like this, your tongue. Okay, so that's kind of how you make it. And don't worry if you can't get it right away. I want you to practice, rewatch this video, and keep practicing as much as you need to kind of understand what to do with your tongue. It takes practice because if you're not used to moving your tongue a certain way, your muscles are not used to this. So if you don't practice this movement, the muscles are not going to be familiar. It's going to feel awkward. So just continue practicing. Okay. Now, how to make the American R? We're going to continue talking about that. So the R sound is voiced. So that means that it is not silent at all. Like we kind of talked about sometimes it's silence in British English or Australian English. And the sound is voiced. So that means that your vocal folds, which are kind of like two folds that help us, they touch like this when we produce voicing, right? When we want to say, ah, they vibrate. So that means that when you're pronouncing the R, the vocal folds are touching, right? So it's never silent, it's always voiced. And the R sound is particularly tricky. It's a particularly tricky letter to teach because the way your mouth produces the sound changes depending on other letters it is combined with. So in fact, there are 8 different vocalizations of the letter R. We have the R, air, ear, or, earl, and the simple R by itself. So that's why it gets so tricky, because there are so many different ways of saying it depending on what sound it is combined with. Also, the sound of each vocalization is affected by the placement of the R, whether it's at the beginning of the word, the middle of the word, or the end of the word, right? But don't get overwhelmed, because you can get the sound right. And how would you do that, do you ask? Da-da-da-dum. You practice, right? It's all about practicing so that your brain learns the way of making the sound correctly, right? Because your brain, your muscles, everything you say and do and understand, it depends on practice and how much of it you actually do. And especially for us, non-native speakers, the older we get, the brain becomes a little bit less plastic. So it doesn't mean you can't learn it. Of course you can. It just depends. You might need to practice a little bit more. So don't get frustrated if you're not getting it at first. It just means that you might need to practice a little bit more diligently and a little bit more often, right? So I would definitely recommend, if R is something you struggle with, to do it, every day for at least 15 minutes so that you are practicing consistently and you're building those connections in your brain to really understand it and to use it almost like a native. So let's practice together. The R, so I came up with some R words that we can practice together. So I'm going to say it. I'm going to leave a bit of time after I say it so that you can repeat after me, okay? Run. Remember, the tip of your tongue kind of goes back. The tongue goes back and up. So you want to cup it. Run. Raccoon, raccoon, rat, rat. I feel like I'm getting like the sun in my mouth, so let me see, so you can see me a little bit better. Maybe like this. Rat, red, 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 receipt, receipt. So I'm repeating the same words, and it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to practice with hundreds of different words. You can practice with just a few and repeat them multiple times. That's fine as well. Okay, now we're going to go to the final words. That means the R is at the end of the words, because that's the natural progression I want you to take when you're practicing. Because what happens sometimes, if you just understand how to say the R words in the beginning of the words, and then you understand how to do it at the end of the words, we kind of naturally learn how to do it in the middle without practicing. Not always, but that sometimes happens. So to save you some time, I would start with R's in the beginning of the words, then at the end of the words, and then in the middle, because that, like I said, might happen naturally for you either way. Okay, so let's practice the final R. Four, four, four. Affair, affair, affair. Deer, deer, deer. So remember, the tongue goes up and back, right? And the tip of the tongue rests kind of in between of the soft and the hard palate. The next word is reindeer, but it kind of got grouped or cut off the ER, went to the next line, but it's reindeer, reindeer, reindeer. Tear, tear, tear. Okay, now let's still practice the middle words to see, well, because we're just started, so we're still gonna have to practice it, but I think it's good to have this practice as well. Carrot, carrot, carrot. Garage, garage, garage. Earring, earring, earring. Horse, horse, horse. Hurricane, hurricane, hurricane. Okay, that was really good. So I don't know if you noticed, but the R changed when it was in the middle and at the end of the words, right? Because we started with carrot is R, carrot, carrot, carrot. It's actually carrot. Even though we write it with an A, it's an sound. Garage, that's the R, R. Then we have horse. So it changes. Even though you kind of, once you understand where to put your tongue, you'll color it differently with different vowels, but you have to practice every single way of saying it, just because of how much it affects the R. The vowels affect the R, and the consonants affect the R. So I definitely want you to get a variety of practice on this one. Okay, that was good. Good practice. So just to recap, the R is the mistake number one that I hear non-native speakers make. How to make it? Your tongue goes up and back. It is a voiced sound. We never keep it as silent like we would in British or Australian English sometimes. It's always pronounced in American English. And practice. Practice gives proficiency. If you Google our words initial, it will give you like or our word list initial or our word list final. You can even say final position or initial position. It will give you a list of words that you can practice. So you don't have to come up with these on your own. There are so many resources available online that can help you. But if this is a sound that you struggle with, I definitely want you to practice frequently. Right? Because most of us, most non-native speakers will have trouble with the R because of how many different ways it's said in American English. So it's definitely something I want you to work on and take priority in until you feel like, okay, no, I got it. This sounds kind of like almost like a native speaker, or this sounds pretty American. So I can move on to something else. And you can practice different things at once, but definitely put that in or add this to your practice list. You did it. You just finished a video about that tricky R sound, which is the first most common mistakes non-native English speakers make when speaking in English. Thank you for watching. I'm so excited you are here on this channel. If you enjoyed the video, please give us a like, leave a comment, and share with your friends who could also use this information. All right, I'll catch you later.